Oof. All right, we're going to begin. Well, good morning, everyone. I am honored to be here on behalf of Sheriff Chad Scott. My name is Kerry Gallup. I work for the Alachua County Sheriff's Office. I provide crime prevention training. Try not to bore you with my resume. I have almost 37 years in law enforcement. I have a lot of certifications that include crime prevention practitioner and CPTED practitioner from the Florida Attorney General's Office. And I have done just about everything in law enforcement you can think of. So I'm hoping that my information today is going to impart some wisdom and maybe some questions at the end. So with that, we will get started with our presentation. Today, we are basically going to present about 50 minutes on active assailant awareness, culture, and climate discussion. What else is it called? A lot of people call it active shooter, mass casualty. And there are different names for it, and it's because they don't always use a gun. There can be other devices, as we will discuss when we go through it. So I always give a disclaimer. The intention of this presentation is to raise awareness of behaviors that represent pre-incident indicators, characteristics of these type of people, better prepare citizens of Alachua County to deal with the active shooter situation or mass casualty should it arise. It should also be noted that in many cases there is no pattern or method to the selection of the victims by the shooter, and these situations may by very nature are unpredictable and evolve quickly. And in law enforcement, we use a term called fluid, meaning things could change rapidly. It could go from someone using a gun or a knife to someone driving a vehicle. It's how they plan it, and there's really no way to know unless you've seen their planning procedure, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Most of my data I get from this website. So I always tell everybody, if you want to scan it, what it does is it takes you to the gunarchive.org, gunviolencearchive.org, and it will give you lots of categories of information, not just mass casualty. There are how many people died of a suicide, how many youth died by a gun by their own hands, how many youth died by a gun, how many hunters died. It's like all of these categories, and you can go there and look it up, and it changes daily because they allow downloadable information off of all the federal websites. So it's a great way to stay in touch with what's happening in our country. So I always ask my audience, and just so you could start thinking about it, when was the most recent one? When was something that happened that I remember? And a lot of people remember whatever was in the news, in the headlines. Some folks remember April 17th, FSU. Okay, and that's near home to us. We're talking 2 hours north of us when a law enforcement officer's stepson gained access to her weapons and went onto a college campus and began to do what he did. We had 2 killed, 5 injured. Law enforcement basically took him into custody. So that's the one a lot of people remember around here. There are other ones like more recently, Colorado, where the guy used Molotov cocktails, right? So there's things that are happening all the time. However, when I first took a data collection on the 10th of this month, over 220 mass shootings in our nation this year since January 1. And that's what you'll get from that website is you can go there and look. They have a tab that says last 72 hours. See what's going on. And so it's 4 or more are targeted. That's the one thing that a lot of people say, well, mass shooting, it's where a gun is shooting and people die. 4 or more are targeted, not necessarily injured or died. 4 or more are targeted. And what we're looking at is not an isolated incident of, say, gang-on-gang violence or domestic violence, where, if someone, we know recently, someone went to a Walmart in our county and it was over domestic violence, right? But it's still a gun and lots of people in that area. So some people go, mass casualty or active shooter. No, his goal was to go there and kill one person. Where mass casualty is, I don't really necessarily have a relationship to these people, although they might. I'm going to go there and hurt or kill or create a scene so I can get some attention on me. So anyway, that's to open your eyes and go, wow, I didn't know. So Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman is an author, psychological warfare expert, psychologist, used to teach at West Point, psychological warfare. Very brilliant man. I've read several of his books. One that really hits me hard, and I've read it 4 times, is Stop Teaching Our Children to Kill. And it talks about, are we raising a society of killers through violent media, violent video games, and violent movies, and children too young are playing these games and gaining access to knowledge and skills. But an interesting thing, I've been to 2 of his seminars. He starts out with, the world is made up of 3 types of people. Sheep, kind, gentle, productive creatures. And really, in his conversations with me, he said, they couldn't even hurt another person if it meant saving their own lives. Meaning, if someone was about to take their life and they had to kill that person or injure that person to do it, they couldn't. It's just not in them. They're kind, gentle people. And if you look at the world, 90% of the world is made up of these types of people. And it's beautiful. We would have no violence if 100% of us were sheep. However, there's the wolf. Feed upon the sheep without mercy. He adds, they love violence, they love carnage, they love blood, they love chaos, they love fear. They love this. Very small group of people, but they get the most attention. They're on the news the most, they're talked about the most. You see pictures of them on social media because of what they've done. So we talk about the wolf, small group of people, but they're the ones that we know. Sheepdog, who live to protect the flock. They confront the wolf. He's always added in his presentations, they're the ones that go forward to something that goes bump or click and it doesn't make sense. They want to know. They might be among employees you work with who say, why is the back door propped open? Why don't we have the light fixed out front? Why are we parking 5 blocks away from our building and we got to walk there in November when it's dark and it's scary? They're the ones that are always thinking safety minded. And I say, rather than having them identified as a problem, engage them and ask them, fix some of these for us. Show us what you would do. The sheepdog, up until Columbine in the 90s, the late 90s, it was law enforcement and military. Not anymore. It has to be you. It has to be me. We have to be a sheepdog for ourselves, if not for anyone else. When you step out the door of your home where you feel safe, you need to be advocating for yourself. You need to be looking around at the things that could be scary or challenging or otherwise put you at danger. And you need to always know what you need to do. I don't like people that are paranoid. That's a hard thing to live through, to live in a paranoia. I want people prepared. You need to prepare yourself for what's next. So he has a lot of great books. I always encourage people, if you're a reader, go read his books. If you're not a reader, go read his books. So I usually ask my audience, does anybody know who this guy is? So this guy was Adam Lanza, Sandy Hook. 16 years old there. So 2 years prior to him committing the action. I always ask, based on the way he looks right now, the dress, demeanor, everything you see, if he walked into this building to ask a question, to get some services, would someone yell killer, shooter, murderer, wolf? No. 16-year-old boy, a little bit stressed in the eyes, but we also know he was on the spectrum. That could be a result of some of his autism, but didn't look like a killer, just a kid. His first victim, does anybody know who that is? His mother, shot with her very own gun. What about that guy? So he was the Aurora, Colorado shooter in the theater during a Batman movie, right? And I always say, well, in this picture, you see a guy with red hair and he's very obviously sitting in a court session, probably a little strange looking, but if you were out at a Marvel movie or one of those superhero movies, would you think anything of somebody walking in cosplay? No. You just go, just somebody who really loves this venue of movies and they're going to have fun tonight. However, he chose a theater that he found had a slower response to law enforcement, so that means he tested the waters. He might have called 911 from a theater. He may have set off an alarm at a theater. He may have done something just to see how long does it take them to get to that area. So it's interesting that he did some research, things that should have stood out. But there he is. What about that guy? So this was a Florida incident.
Orlando?
Yeah, Pulse. We know from research and news media that alleging he was linked to a terrorist cell. However, some of the research I read, military and intelligence couldn't directly link him to the terrorist incidents, saying that he made that statement aligning himself with the ideas. Of course, the terrorists said, yes, we trained him, but nobody could figure out where it happened or how. However, if this guy walked into any building, would somebody yell killer, shooter? No. So we look at these are average people, and that's 3 examples of the wolf. They range from age 18 to 29. And When I teach crime prevention, I teach self-defense, I teach all these programs for the sheriff's office, I'll ask a lot of times, what is a burglar, a carjacker, a rapist, a serial killer? What do they look like? And in reality, they don't look different than you or I. Hollywood and movies will portray them in a certain way, so people go, oh, that's the bad guy. You don't know what they look like. It's behaviors we're looking for. We're looking for how people behave. What do they do? What does it look like? And we all have the instinct built in. It's fight, flight, or freeze built into us, right? That rear part of our brain that says, I need to do something. That's the things we should be paying attention to. If somebody does something, says something, or behaves in a way that you're like, that's when you need to be prepared to challenge it or call law enforcement. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So, does anybody know who Jesse is? We talked a little bit about these other guys who are pretty well known. So this is where I try to get into you emotionally a little bit. I start with Jesse's mother is a national speaker. She travels all around the nation to speak about her son. Very proudly. She says, my son, the natural born protector. He would stand up for his teacher if the kid said, our teacher's mean and strict. No, she loves us. She wants us to grow up strong. She wants us to grow up and do great things. He would stand up for other children being bullied or teased. A natural born protector, right? Jesse was standing in his classroom the day that Adam Lanza stepped in with his rifle, dropping an empty magazine, loading another one, and letting the bolt ride forward. And at that time, little Jesse yelled, run! 9 little children ran out of that room that day and are alive. The other 9 and Jesse stayed inside along with the teacher. Jesse's not with us today. So when we look at Jesse, he is a great example of the sheepdog. Now, I always ask people, why don't we have a statue of this little boy or a plaque that says he saved people? Is it because that he died during the incident and we're afraid to admit that sometimes there's a casualty even if it's a hero? We do it of war soldiers, so when we look at Jesse, it's probably because he's a child, and he in no way would have had knowledge to give up his life. He's not a sacrificer. He did what was built into him as far as how he was raised and how he behaves. But there he is, a hero. And I always ask people, why don't we know more about these heroes? What about Librescu, a professor? Anybody know what he was famous for? So first off, he's an Auschwitz survivor. And as I read about him and studied him, there's no doubt in my mind that Librescu, he knew what gunshots sounded like. He's heard them in his life. He's seen death. He's experienced death. Auschwitz, unimaginable to me. So when I teach a lot of these, I ask people, do you know what a gunshot sounds like? And some people are like, yeah, I go to the gun range, I hunt. What about in your office? Do you know what a gunshot sounds like in your church, in the store where you go shopping, in the parking lot where you go shopping? Because most people would simply excuse it away as, it's a car backfiring or something, and a transformer popped. He knew what gunshots were, and at his second floor of his classroom at Virginia Tech, when the shootings began, he braced his body against the door that didn't have a lock. And he said to his 13 students, smash the windows and jump to your safety. I'll hold the door. 12 students smashed windows and climbed out those second floor windows and dropped to their safety. So I would say, if someone said jump to your safety, most people think second floor, jumping out a window, they're thinking that swan dive. But how about just climbing out the window, holding my arms? I'm 3-foot arms. I got a 6-foot body. I know I'm not going to have that much that I'm going to have to impact. I'd rather have a broken leg, broken hip, injured back than to face bullets. And that's what 12 people did. 13th one was found in the room with Librescu, deceased. She was curled up in a fetal position. Couldn't find herself to actually save her own life. Let's bring it up a little bit because those first two are kind of hard emotionally. Angela McQueen, teacher, high school in Mattoon, Illinois. Not a police officer, no military training, no combat training whatsoever. School teacher, which I say gives you your own combat training altogether, especially if you're in high school. You're dealing with attitudes and teenagers and hormones. However, while standing talking with a school resource officer one morning, she heard gunshots in the cafeteria. She ran down into the cafeteria room ahead of the school resource officer, identified a student with a shotgun shooting in the direction of other students, tackled him and disarmed him. No one was killed. few injuries. She was not injured. Tackled him and took the gun away. No combat training. The law enforcement officer didn't even have time to get there in time to pull the gun out to do anything in that direction. An example of the sheepdog who was able to save lives. When they said, "You're a hero," she said, "I just did what I had to do." She knew what she had to do. She knew what she wanted to do. And maybe at some point in her life, she had prepared, seeing other things happen in our country, in local communities. By golly, if that ever happened in my area, I know what I'm going to do. Amazing. So 3 examples of the sheepdog. They range from age 6 to 76. So a lot of people will say, well, I just don't know if I'm a protector. Depending on what age you find yourself at, you can't use that as an excuse, or your ability to move, your ambulatory, or lack of training. A lot of it starts with what I believe I can do. Food for thought. So I wasn't a big reader, but as I've gotten into my law enforcement, I find that I can't give more information without reading to get new information. And James Allen is very interesting, kind of a writer based on a lot of biblical text, but it's interesting thought process. So he writes this in a 19th century book: "A strong man cannot help a weaker, unless the weaker is willing to be helped. And even then, the weak man must become strong of himself. He must, by his own efforts, develop the strength which he admires in another." This last sentence kind of brings it all together. None but himself can alter his condition. So I know that's masculine. I always tell everybody that's 19th century authors. I'm a father of 2 daughters, so I say this applies to everybody. What does that last sentence really mean? None but himself can alter his condition. And I'll kind of give it to you from this perspective. I can give you all the information in the world to perform heart surgery, or to survive an active shooter, or to defend yourself. Whatever knowledge I have and I impart to you and help you learn it and memorize it, you're the one that has to use it. So unless you've prepared yourself to use it, no one else is going to save you. And what we mean by that is, and you'll see it later in the last video when we look at this, if you're in a chaotic situation and you know you need to get to safety, your best friend, your loved one, your relatives may be going, no, we got it. I don't know what to do. You can take 1 second to go, come with me. I've got a plan. But if they refuse or resist, bye. That's hard to say. In Chicago, a few years ago, we had some shootings up there during a parade. Little children guided their parents on what to do. Why? Because they're trained at school. Little children guided their parents on what to do. So in a lot of ways, we're doing good things even if we don't like that we have to do it. So this can be a bit emotional. We'll talk about it when it's done.
Hello. My name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds. I think I can get done. Location is Stone Douglas in Parkland, Florida. It's going to be a big event. And when you see me on the news, you'll all know who I am. You're all going to die. Pew, 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 pew. Yeah. Can't wait.
So one of the things that I read about that video, I got it from the state attorney's office in Broward County. That went onto social media a whole 3 days before he did it. People saw it. People talked about it. Local law enforcement evaluated it. Local sheriff's office evaluated it. FDLE evaluated it. All the way up to the FBI. And everybody had their hand in on an investigation based on what their policies and the law allowed them to do, but didn't take any action. Now, things drastically changed after this under Governor Scott in mental health, under seizure of weapons for mental health issues and crisis. There was a lot developed to help us identify and take actions when we don't have somebody who's actually committed an act. But obviously, if people saw that 3 days before the incident, how many people could we have saved? So we look at this and go, somebody should have done something. So if anything, it should anger you that this was out on social media and nobody did anything about it. No, because they had followed the policy and the laws that they had according to what they could do. Now, there were people that suffered administratively because maybe other people weren't called into it, or maybe there were actions that they could have taken that would have put them into a court situation, right? Some other things. But as far as the law goes, and as far as that was it. And it's brought us to a new era in the state of Florida, but unfortunately, so many times in anything that we do, a casualty, a problem has to happen where people get hurt before we can actually make change on it. And it's my job in crime prevention is I would rather put training and thought into people's minds to help you at least understand there is things you can do according to self-preservation. So it's hard to watch. I do know that this was just a few years after Sandy Hook. And Sandy Hook was one of those things that a lot of babies died. And what schools learned was we need to lock our doors. This was one of those schools that had a policy that you lock your doors, but the first floor, all the doors, the locks were defeated with magnets because teachers got tired of opening doors and closing doors for students going to the bathroom or going to the hallway. So they defeated the locks so that they didn't have to get up and interrupt their teaching. That's where most of his casualties were on the first floor. Second floor pulled the defeat mechanism out, almost no casualties on second floor. So there were things in place that should have helped, but again, we can be our own worst enemy. So some of the things that I look at, and there's a whole lot you could go down this rabbit hole of, these people plan it, they fantasize about it, they prepare, they approach. I look at this and say, this is what we do for vacation. Whatever time we're going to start planning the cruise or going up north or going camping or going to the beach, we plan all this stuff. They do it too. They do their homework long before they commit the act. And here's the thing. A lot of people see it and hear it, but do nothing about it. They'll hear somebody say, everybody in this place, they should die in a fire. Just can't stand anybody here. And there are a lot of people go, old Joe, he's always shooting off. Why doesn't somebody say something about it? I mean, it could even be a mental health crisis. I have a brother who's bipolar. And when he says certain things, him and I have a conversation. He's never hurt anybody, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have the potential. So it's one of these things that a lot of times, well, it isn't my job. It's all our job if we hear it, to at least bring it to the attention of somebody else. And I'll add this. I give this in crime prevention talks all over. I'm a deputy sheriff. Police departments, we work 24/7 for you. And I always say, would you rather we arrive too early or too late? Bless you. So we look at this. I would rather you hear something, see something that says, that's kind of strange. Maybe someone, call us. It's at least worth a conversation, right?
As this student's appearance demonstrates, having a lax policy about dress makes it easy for a student to conceal a weapon and makes it difficult to identify intruders on campus. A dress code can reduce weapons violations, relieve tensions between gangs, reduce disciplinary infractions, and generally improve the atmosphere of the school. Our policy requires that students tuck in their shirts, making the belt line visible at all times. Our students may not wear baggy pants or colors and insignias that are commonly associated with gang activity. This policy was a collaborative effort between the parents, teachers, and administrators in this community.
So my point isn't to show you that someone can hide 13 guns on them, because obviously if somebody with 13 guns walked through one of our doors, we would notice a strange gait to their walk or something slouching in the pants or whatever. But it is to show you how easy it is to conceal weapons. So what am I looking for when it's suspicious? Obviously, that's just a kid with a polo shirt untucked. When we in law enforcement training, and I'm kind of giving this to you, we use a term called discriminate. I discriminate people's hands all the time. I am trained to stare at people's hands at least very quickly while I'm passing them, when I'm near them, to see, are there any weapons in there? Could they hurt me with something? Do they have fists balled up? Because that could be stress or anger or a breakdown, right? I'm looking for things. Then I'm going to scan the body, the waist. And here's the thing. I wear a big gun on my hip today. This is the gun I carry concealed. And if I'm going to go concealed into a movie theater and shopping, I wear a double X. It's a 2X shirt. Because even with our concealment law, if I'm wearing a large or a medium, that gun, you could see the shape of it in the t-shirt, right? Even though it's fully covered. By law, that's not concealed anymore. That's printing, and that's actually violating the concealment law. So you should not be able to see a gun, as you didn't see anything there. But I'm looking for is the waist clear, whole body, and then any weapons around them. So things that I like to know, could they hurt me with something? So when I evaluate people's office spaces, I always look, if you have the public in your office space a lot and they're near you and they're people you don't know very well, are there things in your desk? Are there things near you that they could pick up and use to hurt you? This is just meant to create awareness. If someone carries a very large backpack into the county building and somebody sees it, that should be a quick glance at least. Does it look heavy? Does it look like there's something sticking out of it? Are they carrying a duffel bag? Do they have a long coat on a hot day when they shouldn't? Is there something they're trying to cover up on purpose? That should send the buzzers off inside your head saying, I need to look at that a little more carefully. And here again, is it bad if you called law enforcement, security, somebody to at least evaluate? And I always tell everybody, you could still be professional and be protective. You don't have to look at somebody and go, hey, you. You could go, hey, can I help you find something? And at least engage in conversation. Are they trying to avoid you? So we look at the relationship where they do these things. 41% are attacks in professional relationships. The largest percentage is where people do business, right? To the people they do business with. So we're all professionals. So always look at us, we're on that 40% range. And I've just said it, 43.2% of the time it's where we do business in the commerce. So it could be shopping, it could be government, where we do business, where we conduct our business transactions. No one comes to any county building, whether it be the tax collector's office, property appraiser's office, or government building and says, I'm having a super happy day, I'm never angry. People come to these places when they're doing something that maybe they don't like to do, and 99% of us go and do it. It's part of who we are. Every now and then somebody comes in, because I know I get the call, hey, we had someone come in and they said some things that made us very uncomfortable. What should we do? And then we talk about it. So it's okay to call and ask, hey, something was strange today. This is the one that always gets me. In a survey in the 1960s, 1.6 times per year a gun went bang on a school property. In 2022, at the end of the survey, 113 times. 41 deaths, 82 injuries. Are we getting better or worse? So we look at this. I've had people challenge me, and they're like, but what if it's a police officer protecting people? What if it's a rabid dog? What if it's a suicide? Because those things do happen also. But I always ask, is it ever a good thing if a gun goes bang on school campus? No. In protection, it's always what we need to do, but we don't want it to happen. That traumatizes people. So, Homeland Security, still the definition to this day is an active shooter, is an individual actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a populated area. So, in that definition, anywhere in there is the word gun used? They use other things. We know recently Molotov cocktails, knives, improvised explosives, chemicals, vehicles. They'll drive over people. So we need to be aware of all of these things. It's not just looking for a gun. It's not just looking for a weapon. I need to be thinking about my safety. If you're at a parade, my wife and I loved and enjoyed our Christmas parade when we came down here. And she looked at me and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm evaluating. What? Your active shooter stuff again? Because she knows I'm always looking. Where are the vulnerable locations? What are the people that are showing up? I love protecting children. I love advocating for children. So my biggest thing is where's the largest group of kids? Because by golly, I'm going to run in that direction. Family, you're going to have to run somewhere else because I'm going to danger and I'm going to help protect kids. But it's always wherever I'm at and there's a large group of people I'm evaluating. When we go to the movie theater, I'm watching people come through the door. One survey I read recently, active shooters, 14 to 28%. I'm sorry, age 14 to 28, largest percent of this time is like 68% of the time. Ages 14 to 28 are white males alone. So we go to the movies, I'm watching. Yep, got a family. Oh, by himself. How old does he look to be? And I'm just kind of watching. What do they look like? No matter where you are, you have to keep your eyes and ears open and be scanning. Not paranoid, prepared. Evaluate. Characteristics. Normally they use a firearm, but it can be other things. As I said, 78% of the time they use a pistol. Why a handgun? Easy to conceal. I can carry more ammunition. It's a little bit lighter, right? They're looking at multiple victims, high concentration. I really want you to look down here at the bottom when it says it's over quickly. 44 events in 5 minutes, 23 in 2 minutes by FBI study. 30 dead, 25 wounded in 11 minutes at Virginia Tech. 11 minutes. 75 dead, 4 wounded in 6 minutes, Trolley Square Mall. Okay? 43% of the time it's over before we, the law enforcement, can actually get there. I always ask, who is going to be the first responder? It's those people that are there. It's you, right? So I tell everybody, and it's not part of this presentation, are you trained in stop the bleed? How to put on a tourniquet? How to stuff a wound? AED devices if you can find one at the location. Are you trained in it? And if not, you should get the training. Number one, you can get Stop the Bleed training for free online and stopthebleed.org through government. And although that's online training, it's at least something if you have nothing. I want you to see just the very first part of this, and we're going to click through it.
Turned out of that horrific and deadly shooting at the Super Bowl celebration in Kansas City, authorities now say the motive appears to have been a fight that then led to that eruption of gunfire. And tonight, your new images of the moment the shots rang out. Just an extraordinary crowd had assembled, the sound sending people running for their lives, scattering to get away. As you know, one person was killed, 22 people were shot, 9 of them were children. ABC's Alex Perez in Kansas City with how this all started.
Tonight, authorities in Kansas City say the hail of bullets that erupted at the end of the Chiefs' Super Bowl parade was the result of a fight that escalated into gunfire. And 2 of the 3 people in custody are juveniles.
Preliminary investigative findings have shown there was no nexus to terrorism or homegrown violent extremism. This appeared to be a dispute between several people that ended in gunfire.
The result of that fight, 23 people shot, at least half of them children under the age of 16, the youngest just 8 years old. Jacob Gooch, his wife, and one of his sons all recovering from gunshot injuries to the feet and legs.
I see smoke coming out of my ankle, people rushing me. I turned to try to start running, and I collapsed to the ground because obviously I couldn't run, had been shot through my ankle.
Investigators poring over videos like these obtained by TMZ Sports that show people treating the injured among the chaos. The 2 men seen in this video tackling a possible suspect were thanked by law enforcement today for their bravery.
I didn't hesitate. It was just do it. So I went to go tackle him, and another gentleman did the same thing.
Paul Contreras and Trey Filter were both there with their families.
I remember the officers pulling my feet off of him. And at that point, I was just looking for my wife and kids.
So, trick question. Active shooter? Remember what the police chief said? There's no nexus to terrorism or homegrown extremism. No. Gang violence just happened in an area where a large number of people were gathered. The biggest part of that was I wanted you to see what it looks like when people are suddenly startled and trampled and pushed over and injured and killed. And it's not intended to cause trauma as much as to say that's the kind of thing you have to think about is when something startles a large crowd of people like that. When you go to a concert or a park event or even our theme parks, you need to be thinking, where am I going to go if something bad happens? Where is my closest building I can hide in? How do I get to the parking lot if I'm actually leaving? How do I get to a place that's safe and be able to take your family there? So when we start the process of protecting ourselves, we talk about OODA loop. So OODA loop was developed by a Korean War pilot. And every time he would maneuver his jet into a position that he felt he was being followed by an enemy plane, he would move again. So in his squadrons that he flew with, he had the least number of shots fired upon his plane. And they said, why is that? So he actually went in and developed this process called observe, orient, decide, and act. So when you see an action happening, and I like to use driving our cars. If we're driving our car down the street and somebody suddenly pulls in front of us or pulls out in front of us, your immediate reaction might be to slam on the brakes or change lanes. So you're observing an action. You're orientating yourself now, what I need to do, this is what's, and it's all very, very quick. It's milliseconds. And you're making a decision. Sometimes by the time we act, it's too late, depending on where it happens and what we're doing at that point in time. So the OODA loop is if you are running away from someone trying to hurt you, whether it be a gun or a knife or they're throwing something at you, don't run in predictable patterns. Don't run in a straight line where they can lead you or try to aim at you. Run zigzaggy. Of course, a lot of people in Florida say, well, that's how I learned to outrun alligators, is running a zigzag pattern. Kind of. So the idea is to don't be predictable. If you feel like you're running in one direction too long, change directions as long as you're still headed to your safe place. We'll look at, I think down the road here, I've got another slide that will help kind of add on to that. If we are overwhelming the bad person, 20 people yelling, 20 people moving, 20 people throwing things, the shooter whose goal is to do one thing, which is what? To hurt, kill people, shoot people. They have one thing in their mind. You overwhelm them with 60 inputs of information now or more. You suddenly distract them, and now they can't focus on what they need to do. I did some exercises based on this with Nerf guns a number of years ago with our courthouse, 82 people in the courthouse. And we had one of the people who worked for the clerk's office holding the Nerf gun. And he gets to go in during this exercise and shoot people that he works with a Nerf gun. What he didn't know is everybody in the courtroom was armed with yellow and green stress balls. When he stepped into the room thinking he was just going to shoot a bunch of his friends and laugh, they all threw the stress balls at him. He didn't know what they were. So his response was duck down. And then he came back up. That's a moment when I can either get away or I can stop him. And when we finished everything and we sort of de-escalated and talked about what happened, he said, it looked like a bunch of lemons and limes being thrown. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to get hurt. So the natural reaction of the body is to. So you've heard people say, throw big, heavy things at them, a stapler, a fire extinguisher. You don't even have to throw something that's heavy. You just need to throw something to distract them, okay? If you're going to fight, there is no fair fight, right? Don't panic. And here's the thing. When we begin to panic, we need to get our brain under control, and it's usually that adrenaline dump that causes that sugar rushing through, and we have our heart rate goes up. What's the best way to gain control of that panic? Anybody? Breathe. Now, I'm not telling you to say, all right, hold it, everybody. I'm going to take a deep breath now. I am saying that you need to consciously focus on breathing because you will hyperventilate. You will cause yourself to get out of control with breathing and not getting oxygen to your brain, and that causes more problems. It becomes more complex. So fight with everything that you have. And here's the thing. Some people, no one wants to be shot, stabbed, or injured, okay? Just like no one wants to have a car accident and be injured. If you're shot or stabbed, if you're in a car accident, if you're in any trauma incident, do you automatically die? And the answer is no. So that's a mindset. The guy who was shot in the leg, he realized he was shot in the leg. Terrible. But he realized I got to do something still. So I always tell everybody, when you're dead, there ain't going to be any decision makings. You're gone anyway. You fight because you'll probably make it if you do. All right. So conceal versus cover. Let's talk about what I do when the incident's happening. And prior to this, prior to anything bad happening, you should have it in your mindset that I'm looking at what will hide me and what will protect me. Conceal and cover. So conceal implies I'm hiding something, but it doesn't necessarily say it could stop bullets. A bush. People hide behind foliage. Hide you, sure. Someone shoots into that hedge line because they think people are hiding back there. You could possibly get hurt. When we look at cover, it's something that will slow down or stop bullets. So when I do surveys through offices and churches and even homes, I like those solid core doors because they slow bullets down or sometimes even stop them. So I say, if you have a room where you're going to lock down, it should have a really good deadbolt, and it should have a very, very thick door. And it should be in an area where you're most likely to be able to exit if you needed to. So I'm giving an example. If we had a nice big bolted door at the front, we got windows we could jump to our safety if we needed to. So always be looking around when you're shopping and you're at a theme park or you're at a carnival, wherever you are. Where is my concealment? Where is my cover? Just put it in your head a couple of times. You don't have to dwell on it. If you're sitting down for a movie, where is my conceal and cover? Where are my exits? Because in an emergency, there are people during fires that haven't practiced a fire drill. They don't run to the exit. Here's something to think about. When was the last time somebody died in a school fire? 1958. We've gotten good at saving people from school fires. We need to get good at saving ourselves from these types of things. All right. When we talk about barricading a door, Virginia Tech shooter targeted 5 classrooms where there were no defensive actions taken. And that's, again, people not prepared. I don't know what to do. Okay? So if I'm going to barricade a door, first off, I tell everybody, make sure the door doesn't open out. So if you're barricading a door, you want to make sure you're barricading a door that they would try to push past your barricade by pushing in on the door. If it's a door that opens out, a lot of times they have those hinges on it. How do I keep those hinges from expanding? I did a training for one of our county services, and it was a group of ladies, and I said, you know, you could use one of your belts to wrap around that hinge, and that will keep it from expanding. They called me back a couple of weeks later, and they said, come in here. And they showed me a desk where they had a bunch of women's belts laid out that were all broken. So what are these? Well, we just wanted to test and our belts didn't work. And the one girl said, yeah, but I brought mine in, and it was one of those really thick leather belts. And she said, you need to change what you tell people, that not any belt will work. They need to have something thick. And I said, all right, so bring belts like that to work, put it in your desk drawer. So it was interesting that people will try things that I tell them, even when I'm just trying to give you an idea. Great way to train yourself. Let's see if it works. Remember, treat gunshots as gunshots. Take action. We all would have difficulty thinking. And even though I train every other month under stressful situation, everyone has trouble thinking clearly. Make a plan, train the plan. And I always advocate, please go get training and stop the bleed. I didn't want to get training years ago when I came here to Alachua County, and I am super happy that I got it. It's for my family. I carry stop the bleed kits in my private car. I have one in my backpack that's here. When I wear my bulletproof vest, there's one in my vest. There is one in my patrol car. I went out and bought my own 5 different ones just so I can have them in case we're on vacation, have an accident, you have an arterial bleed. I want to save the lives of my family and friends that are in the car with me. And they're, $50, $60 for a decent one on Amazon. So I would say find one, buy a couple of them, and put them in places where you have easy access. So this is from Department of Homeland Security and FBI. They created a graphic that says run, hide, and fight. And we're going to look at a video at the very end that's going to show how that looks. When I do this presentation for you all, I do it for churches, tell everybody, you don't want to tell anybody what your training is. That isn't anybody's business but yours, right? What you've trained to do is what we have in our own private toolbox. But when you put up graphics like this, people that are planning an incident will look for keys of where it's an easy location. Give you a really good example. I did training like this for a church one day. And as I walked up to the church to start my presentation, I noticed on their window at the front main entrance, no guns allowed. I'm not opposed to a church saying no guns allowed. I am opposed to someone putting a sign out front that says no guns allowed. Because what does that tell the bad person? No guns in there. Okay, I've got an easy location. You hang up a graphic like this or post it someplace, that might make somebody go, well, probably not my location. I need to go someplace else. I'm probably not going to get my mission obtained here. So something to think about.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally...
So during this video, I ask you to identify who the sheep and the sheepdog are. The wolf is an actor that looks like Vin Diesel.
Authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference. Run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
So when we talk about run, hide, fight, it's not linear, right? You choose what's the action that's appropriate to where you're at and what's going on. You have to determine that at the time. And it may be any combination of those throughout the process of getting someplace safe. I'd like to add that is not in there. Some people don't know Alachua County Communication Center has the ability to receive text messages to the phone number 911. So if you're in a position where you can't talk, where it be domestic violence or something like this, where you're not wanting to alert or alarm somebody, pull up your phone, you can bring up the bubble, type in the phone number 911, and you can start presenting your text message to them. I always say in an emergency like this, you may want to create pretext save areas of your home address, your work address, wherever you would frequent normally, and you think this might be something you would want to tell them where you are. Because under stress, they might say, "Where are you?" So it's always nice to have some pretext set up that you could just copy paste and put it in there for them. So that's the end of the presentation. What can I do to answer any questions? Anyone?
Have we done an evaluation of this building? Like what would be the best places to hide?
So that evaluation hasn't been done recently. There was one back in 2008 when this was not as prevalent. So there was a whole SEPTED survey that I've looked at. There were things to help make the building and the property look less inviting. In August, there will be a more in-depth walk around where we will not only address what would we do during this kind of situation, but also look at places where you could go to be safe. And I'm open today if somebody wanted me to go back to your work area to look at things and create at least an opinion and an evaluation for you, I'm happy to do that as well. Anybody else? Thank you very, very much. I appreciate your time today.